Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeff Overmars, and I work with the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this panel discussion entitled Gender-Based Violence, Education and Preventative Responses, part of our Human Rights Week series of events. Since 2023, communities throughout the province have been invited to join in this week-long celebration of human rights from December the 3rd to the 10th. Presented by the Human Rights Commission in partnership with human rights champions, community-based organizations, and our colleagues in government, the week's events highlight the foundational role that human rights play in protecting each person's right to live free from discrimination and the powerful force of a collective effort. Today's panel takes place on the heels of December the 6th, the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women, and in the midst of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, an annual international campaign to call out and speak up against gender-based violence, and to commit to ending violence against women, girls, and TUS LGBTQIA+ communities. Gender-based violence continues to be a crisis in our communities, and statistics show that women and girls are disproportionately harmed by it. Prevention and education are key to ending gender-based violence. Today's moderator will be the Honourable Leah Martin, Minister of Communications, Minister responsible for LNU Affairs, Minister responsible for the Advisory Council on the Status of Women Act, and Minister responsible for youth. Together with community members, the panel will explore a whole of society approach to preventing gender-based violence through educational and programming initiatives intended to raise awareness and support the people who are most affected by it. Before I pass the mic over to Minister Martin and meet our panelists, I'd like to share that with deep respect for the Mi'kmaq people, the Commission acknowledges that we are located in Chibuktuk, on the unceded ancestral territory of Mi'kma'ki. This land is covered by the sacred peace and friendship treaties signed with the British Crown in the early 1700s. We honor the profound historical and spiritual connections of the Mi'kmaq people to this land, where their ancestors' legacies endure. As treaty people, we are bound by the promises made in these treaties, guiding us in mutual respect and reconciliation. We commit to working together in harmony with respect for the Mi'kmaq people, their culture, and their rights. I'd like to thank all those that coordinated this panel discussion today and for everybody that's registered to attend. Over to you, Minister.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am honored to join you as part of Human Rights Week. This is an important time for us to come together to reflect on the role each of us have in promoting rights and dignity. It's also a time to recognize the challenges so many individuals and communities still face. Gender-based violence is one of those issues. The ability to live free from violence is at the core of human rights. And when that right is violated, it affects everyone. We've learned a lot about gender-based violence over the years. Most importantly, that in order to stop the violence, we need to stop it from happening in the first place. And that's why the focus on today's panel, how we address the root causes of gender-based violence. We know it's possible. And we also know that it takes everyone working together to make a change. There's real reason for optimism in Nova Scotia. The sector is showing us new ways of tackling this complex issue. We're engaging men and boys, and we're changing systems that have for so long held certain groups behind. We're talking about it openly in ways that we haven't before and calling it what it is and saying, this is not okay. We are so lucky in this province to have panelists that you'll meet today driving the work in this space and charting a new course for the future. One where Nova Scotians of all genders in all communities live their lives free of violence. I am so grateful they have joined us here today and excited to share their work with all of you joining us today. So with that, let's meet our panelists. I'll call each of you, and if you wouldn't mind telling us your name, the organization that you represent, and how you're involved in the work to end gender-based violence. Then we'll get into some questions. So with that, first I will call upon Mo Green from Guy's Work.
Thanks, Minister Martin. Pleasure to be here today. I have to start with just a quick anecdote from the weekend. I was in downtown Halifax on Saturday, and I hear my name called, and I turn around, and it's this young man named Kane Harrison, who was part of the original pilot work back in 2012. He ran up and gave me a hug, and it was just so cool to see him and to hear him talk and hear him remember the work from way back when. So that was really, really cool. So I just wanted to share that. But yeah, if you don't know, Guys Work is a school-based program in Nova Scotia where we give young men an opportunity to have conversations about masculinity, especially the pressures they feel about the man that they feel they have to be and how those expectations can have harmful impacts on their health and the health of their peers. It's hard to believe that we're in 2026 almost, and we've gone from 2 schools to the programming in all 9 school jurisdictions in the province. That's a first in Canada, and we're proving that Guys Work can shift unhelpful and unhealthy norms that are connected to gender-based violence. So pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mo. Next, I'll call upon Hannah Rashid. Hannah.
Hello, peace and blessings, everyone. I'd like to thank Minister Martin and the organizers for this opportunity to be here today. My name is Hannah Rashid, and I'm a social worker. I have lived and worked in Halifax, Nova Scotia for over 40 years. I currently work at the Atlantic Muslim Resource Centre, AMRC for short. The AMRC is a department under the Ummah Society, which is the umbrella organization which oversees the Ummah Mosque and Community Center. Well, that's a lot of information. This mosque is a well-known landmark now in Halifax as one of the largest mosques in Nova Scotia. The AMRC provides culturally responsive and faith-based services to Muslims living in the Atlantic region. We also support Muslim international students, members of the community who are often overlooked. Many of these students arrive in Nova Scotia to pursue their studies, and for many, it is their first time living away from their families and home countries. They encounter a range of challenges, including isolation, culture shock, and adjusting to unfamiliar environments, which increases their vulnerability to various mental health struggles. And I want to highlight specifically the Muslim female students are vulnerable. The work I do includes supporting individuals and families who are impacted by GBV and the systems which are involved in these situations. And the systems, I mean, whether it's the police or it's child and family well-being, all of this impacts how the families navigate through the difficulties. I've always been interested in prevention work, which include parenting programs and mental health awareness workshops. Currently, at the AMRC, we're facilitating leadership workshops for young men, and this includes some form of sports, soccer, basketball, and conversations about what it means to be a man, and this is done within a faith-based environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Next, I will call upon Nancy McDonald.
Thank you so much, Minister, and nice to be with my fellow panelists. Some I've known before and some are new, so nice to spend the hour with you. Nancy McDonald, I work with Family Service Nova Scotia. I've been with the organization for over 28 years, and our organization serves families from Glace Bay to Yarmouth now, and the majority, all of our programs come from a family foundation ecological model, which is really the basis of the earliest prevention and intervention of family-based or gender-based violence. The goal of all of our programs is to enhance the mental and emotional well-being of families, and so they all indirectly sit in gender-based violence and family-based violence prevention work. Personally, I've been have held a deep passion for particular services and the gaps in services for men and male identifying individuals across the province. And so for the majority of this career, I have advocated and worked with alongside government and other community organizations to ensure that there is a prevention lens to family and gender-based violence. We run and still the one and only men's health center in Antigonish. Our organization was successful in launching the first ever in Canada men's helpline during the pandemic in partnership with government. And similar to Mo, my antidote is I still stay connected to the work as a CEO. I feel that I make better decisions as a CEO when I actually still stay directly connected. I'm a clinical therapist by training, and so I just worked a overnight shift of the men's helpline last night. And I'm continued to be reminded of the vital importance of timely access to prevention and early intervention supports for male and male identifying individuals. So I'm very happy to be here, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Nancy, and thank you for your night shift last night. I hope the coffee is being good to you this morning.
Look, it's right here.
Awesome. Next, I will call on Mario Rowley.
Hi, my name is Mario Roll. Thanks for having me here. I wear multiple hats, but today I represent an organization called Scotia Winds of Change. One of the ways I'm personally involved in this work is through an initiative called the Barbershop Talk. Our mission is to create a safe space and foster open conversations to address ultimately ending gender-based violence. This program, it focuses on creating a therapeutic dialogue, particularly among men, and especially impactful for men of African descent here in Nova Scotia. The Barbershop Talk have long been a cultural hub in many communities in Northern America. It serves as a trusted space for men to gather and share support with one another. As we leverage this environment, we encourage honesty, honest conversation about masculinity, about relationships, and the role men can play in breaking the cycle of violence. These discussions provide a meaningful opportunity for reflection, for healing, and for education, helping men to better understand the importance of respect, empathy, and accountability in their interactions. By fostering a sense of awareness and responsibility, we aim to empower men to become active allies in the fight against gender-based violence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mario, and welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for your time today. So with that, let's get into some questions. And I'll start with you, Mo. Guy's work is now in 75 schools across the province and growing. You've reached more than 1,000 young men and boys with this program. Could you talk to us a little bit about the intersection between education and gender-based violence prevention and why it is such an essential part of the solution?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Minister. I guess the easiest way is to use an anecdote. It was late last month. I was co-facilitating Guy's work with a teacher, and I'm recalling all the lessons had an impact, but I remember the powerful reaction in particular to the body image lesson that we use with the guys. And it's about the body image pressures that youth face, and unfortunately the lousy language it's sometimes used to make people feel bad about their body, sometimes in a sexual way. And to be blunt, it's often what the men are saying about women's bodies, in person and online. And we got to an interesting place in the lesson where we tried to reframe the issue and ask the guys to think about how they'd feel as fathers if the target of the hurtful language was their daughter. And they were horrified. They had this physiological reaction to that idea. They didn't want that to happen, and which was good because we're creating a nudge. But we took it a step further to think about their present context and their present female peers, especially in a school environment, and to remember that each girl that's harassed is already someone's daughter, already someone's child. And you could see the very uncomfortable facial expressions and body language. And we knew that we were making an effective nudge to get them to reflect and think about disrupting some of those harmful attitudes that they have. But back to the question, yes, we're creating a space for conversations that typically don't happen with guys and men. But it's more than just creating the space. It's also creating a space that's very, very strategic in that we're trying to move beyond simple knowledge translation and to shift attitudes. So, for example, we're not simply defining sexual harassment in that space, but we're creating an experience that get guys to reflect again on sexual harassment as potential fathers or friends of women, and to connect those harmful attitudes with gender-based violence. So it was pretty amazing to see. The good thing is it's predictable. So these lessons are having an impact. The spaces are having an impact, and we just have to grow and make it bigger across the province. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mo. I've heard you speak a few times, and I've heard feedback from the Guys Work program. And I think of how amazing it is that you've been able to create this safe space in the schools to have these more difficult conversations, for it to be a safe space to work through some really heavy and some really difficult things, such as body issues and toxic masculinity, to create a safe space for men and young boys to be able to work through that difficult and heavy work is really, really remarkable. So thank you. Next, we will go to Nancy. So Nancy, Family Services of Nova Scotia works with people in communities right across the province. And that includes the many Nova Scotians who live in rural and even remote areas. How do you and your team connect with folks in those rural and underserved communities? What are some of the unique challenges that Nova Scotians are facing in those areas, and how do you respond differently?
Lovely question, Minister Martin. Thank you. The very first thing that we do is we reflect internally in our organization from a very strong trauma and violence informed perspective around what can we do differently. And so in 2016, we were faced with an invitation to create a family-based in-home model called Families Plus. And in that model, it required a brilliant idea of 24/7 access being provided. And the reason for that was many of our programs and services across the province, run by my fellow lovely network of not-for-profits and government, they shut down at 4:30, sometimes by 8 o'clock. And what we knew was that the family concerns and issues and rough patches, they don't stop at 8 o'clock or 4:30. And so myself and our leadership team, we thought long and hard, can we actually take this organization from a very status quo, 8:30 to 4:30? We thought we were all that in a bag of chips because we used to open till 8 o'clock one night. And we said, can we make this organization 24/7? Is that possible? And when we very quickly came to the realization that we needed to, and if we were going to properly service Nova Scotians in the way that we knew that we needed to. And so from that point on, fast forward to now, we have 5 programs that are 24/7. What that has allowed us to do is it has allowed us to continue to internally reduce the barriers that Nova Scotians face with accessing services. It has allowed us and enabled us to reach communities that are very rural. We live in a province where we have a large population that are living in communities that don't have access to office spaces, or the travel costs of getting to those office spaces can be very prohibitive. And so with the 24/7 offerings, it has allowed virtual and telephone-based touchings or touch bases when the other services are no longer available. What it also did, without us intentionally doing it, but it also then provided a level of support to our fellow not-for-profits, so that they then can have their direct service users be able to lean into our 24/7 offerings. And so they can still do the beautiful work that they do. They can finish at 4:30. They can pass over their direct service users, especially the men's programs, the Strengthening Fathers, Fatherhood Matters offerings across the province. They then can lean into our men's helpline, our women's helpline, and our all genders or our youth line. And then referrals back or linkages can be made back to those community organizations. So we're constantly trying to figure out what can we do better and how can we do it better to make sure that all Nova Scotians have equitable access to services and when they need it. One of our biggest learnings with our men's helpline is it's disrupting the narrative that men and male identifying individuals don't access services. What we have learned from that is that the services aren't offered in the way that is appropriate or deemed valuable for them. And so with the men's helpline, the majority of our men and male identifying individuals are calling between the 10 p.m. and the 8:30. Our women and our all genders, the majority of those callers are calling during the day or up to the 10 p.m. And so it's a fascinating learning for us as an organization who is grounded in family-based and gender-based violence, in that we need to do better at looking at what we can do differently.
Thank you, Nancy. There's so much in all that you said, but certainly, I've visited your space and your incredible team, and I think, what I hear and the ways that you do things differently, the ability to provide that 24/7 support, and your 5 programs, they really do provide life-saving services. On top of breaking down these barriers for access that have been there for so long, both by providing that 24-hour support, but also the virtual, the telephone. Really, I feel like that open warmth of support is really there, and you can certainly feel it with you and with your team. And just really appreciate your insight on this question. Thank you. So let's stay on the topic here of underserved communities for a moment. And this is definitely a priority area for me, not only professionally in the work that we do as government, but also personally as well. The fact of the matter is that populations have experienced long-standing systemic barriers for access to support. And African Nova Scotian communities and Black men are definitely one of them. So Mario, your work has been about creating more supportive spaces for men in your community. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience and in particular the importance of culturally responsive solutions?
All right. Thank you for raising this important topic. I'm gonna tell you right now, the barbershop talk / cutting edge is Canada's next biggest thing. It used to be a best kept secret, but it ain't a secret anymore. Let me tell you why. My experience working to create supportive space in Nova Scotia, in particular between African Nova Scotian men and Black men, has shown us how critical culturally responsive solutions are in addressing systematic barriers. It started off with me and a man by the name of Dr. Ron Millam. We realized that, these sessions were getting bigger than us. And so we had to connect with various organizations, various groups, to help support this initiative. The Barbershop Talk, basically it's designed to foster these therapeutic dialogues among men, particularly those of African descent. in an environment that feels safe, familiar, and culturally significant, right? This barbershop, our barbershop talk, have historically been more than just places to get haircut. They serve as trusted community hubs where, men gather and share experience and support one another. By us utilizing this culturally significant space, we're able to encourage and have open and honest conversation about key issues. Mo talked about it earlier: masculinity, relationship, the role men can play in breaking the silence of violence. These discussions not only promote healing, but also they empower us, not just them, but us as men to take proactive steps towards creating healthy communities. Culturally responsive solutions like our barbershop, is vital because they acknowledge and respect the live experience of that individual or individuals involved. They create a sense of belonging and trust, which is essential for meaningful dialogues and also promote change by meeting with people by meeting these individuals where they're at, both physically and culturally. We begin to dismantle these barriers and build various pathways to better support systems. This work has been incredibly rewarding for us. You notice I didn't say for me, I say for us, and it underscores the importance of creating space that reflect the values and the needs of the communities we aim to serve.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mario. It's really hard to just pick one thing that you spoke about because I love everything that is being said and everything that you're sharing. So thank you. I love that, and I'll just focus on this, the safe space that you provide, being in community for community and meeting people where they are at. Building with that trust and allowing for that safe space to do this work is so genuine and so authentic and so pure and so I think it's really, really special in allowing for growth and more collaboration. So it just it feels and sounds and is just it's so natural to you, and it's just beautiful the way that you connect in community in this way, and I think it's really, really special. So thank you. Yeah. So Hannah, I would love to hear your perspective on this as well. What about prevention and what does it look like within the Islamic faith-based community? Can you share some of the bridges you're building and what that looks like in practice?
I just want to comment on Mario's section. I just really admiring the passion, and it's so nice to see people doing this work with that passion, because sometimes that's missing. Sometimes it's just like, oh, I got a job to do. And when I hear that it's such an emotional investment that people give into this work, I really admire it. So thank you, Mario, and everyone here. It's really nice to be among such distinguished folks that are doing great work. So back to the question, I'm going to be using some terminology, and I want to clarify, because this still confuses people to this day. I want to clarify that the religion that I practice is called Islam, and as a follower, I'm known as a Muslim. So these two words I'm going to be using interchangeably, and hopefully folks can follow along. When we talk about prevention of gender-based violence within the Muslim community, I think it's important to start with the understanding that prevention is not a single intervention. It is the underpinning of a socially just society. In the religion of Islam, there's a strong foundation for this work. Islam emphasizes dignity, compassion, justice, and accountability. These are prevention principles. And so for me, prevention means reconnecting Muslim families and communities to these values in meaningful and practical ways. In my social work practice, I see prevention as three interconnected areas: education, relationship building, system navigation. So with education, I work with families, community members, and sometimes community leaders to unpack, harmful cultural norms which get mistaken for religious teachings, which is a really big one. And I think this is also where a lot of assumptions come into play, that this is the religion, whereas it's a cultural practice. Islam teaches mutual respect, mercy, and, reducing harm. But sometimes cultural beliefs or siloed understandings overshadow these principles. So prevention is creating brave spaces to have conversations about healthy relationships, consent, emotional well-being, and nonviolent conflict resolution or restorative work through an Islamic lens. When families hear that their faith actually supports safety and mental well-being, the message resonates differently. So relationship building, which is part of why we're here today, and that's beautiful that I'm able to build more bridges. It's about, the community, so people know where to turn for help. And then early on, they know where the preventative services are. So I collaborate with community leaders, community elders, women's groups, and mainstream service providers to strengthen trust and reduce stigma. Many people, they hesitate because there's still a lot of fear, shame, judgment. They don't want to break up their family. They don't want to go into that route. And that's one of the things that we have to work on, in how to do it in a better way. System navigation and advocacy, my third interconnected piece, is that many Muslim families face barriers when accessing mainstream services, whether due to language, immigration stressors, Islamophobia. This is a big one. Don't have time today to get into that. Or a lack of cultural safety. Prevention in my practice looks like supporting families to access mental health resources, legal supports, shelters, or counseling in ways which honor their faith and cultural context. It also means advocating with service systems so they have a better understanding of Muslim family dynamics, collectivist values, and the role of their faith in healing. The AMRC offers workshops to service providers which can guide them to having a better understanding of Islam and best practices to Muslim individuals and families. So this is something that's been really popular, these workshops that we've been offering to community at large. Gender-based violence is not a private issue, it's a community responsibility. And within an Islamic framework, prevention means looking at the values of compassion, accountability, and care. When community members, imams, religious leaders, and mainstream service providers work together, we can create early intervention pathways, reduce stigma, and strengthen safety and dignity for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Again, everyone says so much, and some things that I'll just lean into. You had so much in there, but increasing trust, increasing relationship building, decreasing stigma, and at the root of all things, this mutual respect for one another are just such incredibly important pieces of this work. And I really do appreciate you raising that, and I appreciate you emphasizing that. So I'd like to shift gears here for just a moment. Prevention work is really about addressing the root causes of violence. And when we talk about the root causes, we often mean things like social norms or power dynamics, or like Hannah said, stigma, among others. Maybe we could just do a quick 2-minute response to this one from each of our panelists. What is one root cause that you feel we need to be paying more attention to, and why? And perhaps I'll start with Nancy, and then I will move to Mo, Mario, and Hannah.
Sure, thank you. I think from our learning so far, the root cause would be a disruption in connection. There's something happens with the young boys and male identifying individuals. There seems like there's a connection in their early years. Mo's work sits in about grade 7. And then as we enter into as a society, there seems to be a gradual disconnection from family, from community. And then there's a system disconnection too between community and government, although that is definitely better than it used to be, in terms of the services and the programs at a prevention and early intervention need for the men and boys. And so to me, I would just sum it up with it is a disruption of connection. And we know from a trauma and violence informed systems level is it will take all of us together collectively as a society, community, government, individuals, all of us together in order to change the dial on this. And we live in a very tiny province. And so I am convinced and very hopeful that we are able to move the dial on this if we focus on those connection disruptors.
Awesome. Thank you. Over to you, Mo.
Thanks, Minister Martin. Just very, very quickly, much admiration for Hannah and Nancy and Mario. Hannah, the talk about brave spaces. Nancy, what you talked about, the normalization of men seeking help, and Mario, that idea of meeting people where they are, which is an easy thing to say, but very difficult to do in practice. So thank you for all your work. I thought about this question, and for me, it's not so much a root cause, but I think this very difficult to disrupt masculinity script, if that makes sense, that many men feel that they must adhere to as they grow up. It's a very narrow script. It's certainly not a healthy script, and I think some guys have even called it a form of captivity or even prison-like. And we want men to feel that they can step away from that code that was never written for them and just simply feel free to sort of be their more authentic self, which in my experience is almost always a kind person and a helpful person, and I think a good human being. Thanks.
Thank you, Mo. Over to you, Mario.
Oh, listen, Nancy, Mo hit the nail on the head. I don't have too much to say. However, I would like to say relationship building. As it relates to men, especially I know Mo talked about the masculinity, right? A lot of times when we talk about domestic violence, a lot of times men are known to be the accused, but sometimes too, what we don't look at is men being the victim. So I talked about accountable spaces, not everyone say safe space, I say accountable space. Men can come in and we hold them accountable. They hold us accountable, right? So relationship building, because one thing goes here. If they don't trust you, they're not going to open up. So it's now time to, create those spaces, not just for Black men, but men, women, non-binary. We need to start creating the space. Another thing before I go is when we talk about relationship between government, community, it gotta work, right? Where, for me, for years, I've been doing this work on my own part. Thanks to the status of women, they support me hands down. But what about these other groups? There are other groups. You know, I love the table. I love that the minister now has this table where people are bringing these issues to the table and they're sharing. So, you know what? That's a great step. I encourage more of this work. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mario. Over to you, Hannah.
So amazing. I'm just trying to think of my area that I can kind of focus on. I'm really appreciating everybody's comments. And I'll try to keep it within 2 minutes, but there's so much to speak about a certain population which doesn't always get highlighted of the struggles. So especially with our growing immigrant population in Nova Scotia, I think we have to pay more attention to the impact of unaddressed stress and trauma within immigrant refugee families. And this intersects with power dynamics at home, because I'm finding more and more of these families are getting caught up in the systems. So these families that I support, some of them have survived war, displacement, loss, and they arrive here and they face whole new layers of stress, culture shock, racism and Islamophobia, financial insecurity. You know, I could go on, and even their education is not recognized. And so, you know, that impacts their economic status. They have language barriers, they have role changes in the family, and, you know, there's some lack of extended family support, because I'd mentioned before about collectivist communities, much like the Indigenous and the African Nova Scotian communities. We believe in having extended family nearby. These pressures reshape power dynamics and increase conflict and make it harder for families to communicate or cope in healthy ways. And what I want to say is these stressors don't cause violence, but they can create conditions where unhealthy patterns or controlling behaviors can go unchecked if there's no support, going back to the preventive piece. And then, again, we mentioned the stigma, and so it's still there because many newcomers, they don't trust the systems. They don't feel safe with them. So we have to look at, you know, the cumulative impacts that these can cause in families, and also how can these families rebuild their lives in a new country with such limited support. I also want to highlight that media narratives in global political events significantly impact Muslim individuals and families, which contribute to stigma and fear. We continue to see a rise of Islamophobia, which further affects Muslims and their sense of safety, belonging, and well-being. By offering culturally safe services and creating community spaces where families feel safe, before things escalate, we can try to address some of the challenges which I have identified. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. These are so many great comments from each of you. And you know, I feel the heart that you bring to the work, and how you lead with that. And there are some commonalities in the messaging that I'm hearing, and I appreciate Mario referencing, you know, the table and the great work that's happening there, because there is so much that we are doing. There is so much great work, and each of you have been able to speak to the work that you're doing in your areas, and how that momentum is growing, changing, and evolving. There's so much still to do. There's so much more that we need to do together, and all across government and all across our province. You know, it like Nancy, I believe you said it, you know, beautifully. It's everybody. It's all of us, and we're each having these conversations in our daily work, and we're hearing from our communities, and we're hearing from Nova Scotians about how the needs are evolving and growing, and we're all doing as much as we possibly can to keep going. But I am very optimistic when I hear from folks, you know, that I'm on the call with, and when I am out in community, talking about this in new ways, and talking about you know, priorities around trust building, relationship building, and emotional well-being, disrupting masculinity scripts, about men having, and boys, and non-binary people having the ability to have safe spaces to ask for help, or to not be okay, and to reach out for that help. And I think all of us working together and continuing to have these conversations is exactly what we do need to keep doing to see the work continue to grow, but to end the epidemic, and to keep doing that great work. So I just wanted to mention that, and I won't talk for too long, because there is no shortage of work to do, and I want to get into one of our last few questions with the time that we have. So there's certainly, like I said, there is no shortage of work to do around gender-based violence. But I must say, and going back to the Ministers' Roundtable that Mario referenced just a few weeks ago, and the people who marched together, there must have been close to over 100 people that marched together Saturday night at the vigil. I'm really optimistic about where we are going as a province. The fact that you're here with us today tells me that you see the potential for real change too. So as we are starting to wrap up, I'm wondering if each of the panelists could offer some closing comments that tell us what signs of progress are you seeing right now that give you the confidence that we are moving in the right direction. So maybe I'll start by leaning into Mario, and then we'll go to Nancy, Hannah, and Mo, just to switch it up. So over to you, Mario.
Okay, what I've noticed is more organizations and communities are beginning to embrace the idea that solutions must be crafted and tailored to the lived experiences and cultural context to the people they aim to serve. This shift in mindset is very important for community. I've also noticed that, more open conversation about mental health and masculinity within African Nova Scotian and Black communities. Men are starting to feel more comfortable in discussing issues that were once considered taboo, like vulnerability, emotional well-being, and the impact of various systematic barriers on their lives. This openness is powerful. It's a powerful step towards healing and change. A growing number of partnerships and collaboration between grassroots initiatives and community leaders, and also governmental institutions. By working together, we're creating stronger supportive systems, and we're amplifying the impact of these efforts. You know, Lastly, I've also seen younger generations stepping up, eager to engage in these conversations and taking actions, which gives me and the team that works with me hope for sustained progress in the future. So once before, we would have older men come in our space and, they would do mentoring. Now it's going back and forth where the younger folks are also doing the mentoring. So that's something that really just it blows my mind and I love it. So I'm gonna leave it there.
Oh, I love it. And the inner child in me just looks for this like heart button where I can just fire hearts off every time you're saying what you're saying. And I think, to hit on the elevation of lived experience, grassroots, amplifying younger voices, like I am here for all of it, and I just really love what you shared there. So I won't talk too long because I want to get over to Nancy as well and hear from everyone. So Nancy, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Loving the conversation. I wish I also had a heart button because I would be doing that too, Minister. I think I'll scaffold off of Mario's, and it's definitely I've seen a shift in perspective over my very long career. A shift in perspective of an understanding of the power of connection between government and community. We are truly better together. We truly are, and the power of community in terms of connecting individuals to services and with families. And so I feel like that opening and that safe, braver space that we currently are in this province. In 2025, going into 2026, we seem to be in a place where there is a shift in perspective, and that is very exciting for me.
I love that. Thank you, Nancy. Hannah, over to you.
Okay, so a sign of progress for me is that when community members are coming to the AMRC and appreciating the support they're getting because they state that they feel safe coming to service providers who look like them, can speak their language, are culturally sensitive, and providing that space to explore faith-based practices, which isn't always the norm with other service provision. Another sign of hope is that mainstream service providers are reaching out to the AMRC and forming collaborations and partnerships with us. So I've been working with Canadian Mental Health Association, ISANS, THANS, Transition Housing Association, just to name a few. So I'm working also to make inroads with the Child and Family Wellbeing Department so that prevention support can be provided early to newcomer families. So these are positive signs that mainstream services are becoming more aware of the cultural and faith-based realities of immigrant refugee families. These are meaningful changes, and this can, have positive impacts across the board. Thanks.
Thank you, Hannah, and thank you for the points that you brought. Again, so much and so much that you said as well with Nancy. And I think that there was a bit of an alignment here that I'm also hearing around connection and collaboration and breaking down silos and working together. And again, it goes back to the heart, but I love hearing about as we evolve and do things better, and that what you're hearing from community and that collaboration that is coming and flowing through both your organizations. So with that, we'll go over to Mo. Mo, over to you.
Thanks, Minister. I have to admit there's a measure of frustration in responding to this because I wish everybody could be in the circle with us at some point and be courtside with the youth and hear what they're saying. I see a very clear appetite in being open to sort of reoffering their masculinity in a healthier way. So that's really, really cool. I feel like we're moving in the right direction every time I facilitate a group. We see guys reaching out for help. We see better communication between the young men, especially when there's arguments, and we see persuasive language instead of coercive language. We see displays of empathy and critical thinking. We also see guys being more comfortable being vulnerable in front of the other guys, which is really cool. And I have to think when all of that comes together, we see healthier male friendships. And if we see healthier male friendships, we're going to see healthier intimate partner relationships and just healthier human beings, I think. And I guess to close, I just say, the progress needs an ongoing investment. And not only to scale up and sustain the work and expand the work that we're doing, but to reach all those other settings where we can reach men and hopefully change behaviors and change attitudes. So I hope that wasn't too subtle a message, Minister.
No, I love messages, whether they're subtle or blatant or direct. I love it all. You're making me think of, though, because we have an extra moment, and I would love to just capitalize on the few moments that we have left together. And something that you said, Mo, you feel that optimism every single time you have a circle, every single time you see the looks on men and boys' faces as these messages and these teachings are making that impact. I'd love to just go around one more time, and we'll start with you, Mo. Is there a moment that really stands out, even a little bit more specifically, that feedback that you've heard, or somebody that stands out, something that they've said that really sends a message home, this helped this person?
Sure, a very recent group, and this is not connected to gender-based violence, but just about masculinity and being a human being. And it makes me think about the work that Hannah is doing and connected with. There was a circle where there was a newcomer kid who had a certain perspective about sexual identity, and we understood it. We respected that perspective in the circle. But there was a conversation about parenting, and this youth said very boldly in the circle that if he had a gay kid, he would get rid of that gay kid. A very emotional thing to mention. But then immediately there were 3 young men in the circle, all members of the high school basketball team, who immediately said, "We got you. We'll raise your gay kid." And that was transformational, and that was wonderful to see. And I think that says a lot about this very simple approach in the classroom and what it can accomplish in all kinds of different areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo. Hannah, over to you. Any moments recently that have really stood out to you in terms of that optimistic message of we're making an impact and this is really working?
I'm trying to narrow it down. Thanks, Mo, for that insightful piece. I think this is important. Again, the brave spaces to have conversations and to unpack that support and relationship building. I've recently collaborated with some other organizations around financial abuse and how to do some preventative work around that. And that's more service provision, but the other folks are more in the background policy. I'm the only one who does frontline. And so I had shared some of the things that I had noticed. And this year, particularly, there have been a lot of financial abuse situations with some of the clients that I am serving. And I thought about the theme and I talked to other folks and they're like, okay, let's do it. So we have actually, in the process of developing a financial literacy toolkit for rural Nova Scotia. So for me, that's like, wow, we can do that. And it's really nice to see that all come together when we're open to having conversations, move out of our comfort zones and say, is there somebody else who'd like to work with me, or with somebody else, and bringing in that expertise, and so that we are united together.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. What an incredibly important two examples that have just been covered. Nancy, over to you.
Sure. I think I'll use a men's helpline example, and the helpline is funded from the Status of Women. So first of all, thank you for that. The Status of Women saw or heard a gap that we had addressed alongside government during the beginning of the pandemic, when there was an increase to 211 calls, 75% of an increase in male and man identifying individuals looking for help. The Department of the Status of Women stood into a brave space and funded the first ever men's helpline in Canada. There is now one in Ontario and one in Calgary, or Regina, sorry, Saskatchewan. And I'm constantly reminded when I'm on those calls at 2 a.m. And the men's helpline works, so there is no fee. You get a 30-minute access to a licensed social worker or counselor. It's a soft transfer directly from 211. It was the first program ever to be able to link 211. We use 211 as an intake, so there is no waiting list. It's an immediate soft transfer. And at 2 a.m., I am constantly reminded of the immense need for access to timely services. When those males and male identifying 18 or older Nova Scotians call, they are in duress. They're not crisis. They're in duress to process what is happening. The majority of the calls are relationship based. Something has happened in those relationships. There's been a breakup, there's been a separation, there's been an argument, there's something happening, and they are reaching out. And I would love to think, and I think this what gets me up in the morning, is that is the most purest form of prevention, early intervention this province currently has. Because it is there in the darkness of the night when I don't know what would happen if the call wasn't answered.
Well said, Nancy. I can't say better, so I certainly won't. But I will say thank you, and I will jump over to Mario.
All right. I want to piggyback on Nancy. I would like to thank the Status of Women, African Nova Scotian Affairs, Labor Skills and Immigration, and the Association of Black Social Workers. Why I say this, I mentioned that the barbershop talk, we started out in our own, like from our own pockets. And then, Status of Women and ABSW does this found hope and saw us. And it's like, what? We want to support you. But getting feedback from the men, right? We can talk and talk and talk and talk. The thing is, it's now, okay, what's next? And so let me tell you what's next, or what is next. In April of this year, we did a Black Men's Summit in Tatamagouche, Nova Scotia, where we got over 120 plus men coming in an accountable space to be vulnerable and talk so we can and share insight. We can't ask for anything better. This is where it starts. It don't start with me. It starts with us, them, and me included, right? And so let me say what came from this. This is what came from it. Collaboration with community. That's my 5 cents.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mario. It's so powerful to be on a panel with each of you here today. And on behalf of the Office of the Advisory Council on the Status of Women, I want to say thank you for for the recognition. It's certainly not what we do it for, but we believe in the work that each and every one of you are doing and that the sector is doing in this space. And so I do just want to recognize our appreciation for each of you. And as we close our session today, I want to thank each of the panelists for your thoughtful engagement. There is a growing sense of momentum and optimism within our province that continues to take shape. And part of that is for panel sessions like this one here today. And before we end today's session, I just want to close by reminding everyone out there, if you are experiencing violence, you are not alone. Help is available. There are numerous resources and supports available, some that have been discussed today. But I do want to mention 211 helplines are a great resource. Someone is always available to listen, and they can help connect you to the support you need. So thank you, everyone, and really appreciate you being here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister and panelists, for the wonderful, wide-ranging and informative discussion. Just to let folks know, the recording of this session will be available via the Human Rights Commission's website within 24 hours. So if you know of someone who may have intended to be here and was unable to, please do share the link with them and help to spread the word of these wonderful projects and resources. Thank you once again, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.